These three sources of funding all happen before you cross the break-even line, right? So you're selling your mom and the drunk guy at the bar, the angels, the seed VCs, you're selling them based on the promise. You're selling them based on the vision. You're selling them based on who you and your team, who you are, and what kind of pedigree you have, and do I believe you can deliver on this amazing vision, thing that you're doing, because you have no revenue. It's pre-profit. But it's also not, I've got an idea, right? You have to have the team in place, prototype. You've gone to some shows, and you've built some traction. You've hit a few checkpoints in the rally. But again, it's all before you cross the line. And then, wrong way. And then you cross the line, and now you can hit up traditional VCs that are investing in this kind of 1 to 5, 1 to 10 million range. But you only go talk to them once you actually have products in the market, generating revenue, et cetera, et cetera. And then for the lucky few, growth VCs, these VCs only want to talk to you when you're already making 5 million, 10 million in revenue, and these guys they're investing in your success in order to make more success. They're not gambling. They're not your mom that's like, I believe in you, here's some money to get started. And so the important thing, a few important things to note here is, you need to understand where you are along the blue curve so you know who are the right investors to talk to, right? So you wouldn't go talk to a growth VC when you're just getting started, right? You heard there's investors out there. Let me go knock on some of those VC doors, and they're growth VCs, and you're saying, I got this idea. And they're all going to kick you out of the office. Likewise, if you've got $5 million, $10 million in revenue, and you're in your growth spurt, you don't go say, hey, mom, can you loan me a couple of grand to invest in my company? Like, you don't need that scale of money anymore. So you do need to think about where you are along that curve in order to be smart about which investors to approach. And all these investors know where they are along that curve, right? And so a seed VC will like to see that you had an angel investor, or a VC will like to see that you were part of an accelerator, that you had friends and family money. So each one's kind of looking behind to see who else helped you to hit those checkpoints in the rally. And likewise, early investors know that the other investors are coming down the line, right? So the angel invests in part because he likes the team and thinks the vision is great, but they also think that what you're doing will be able to attract a seed VC. So they give you their money knowing that it's going to get you to the next checkpoint because they assume that what you're doing is sexy enough, for sure the seed VCs will invest. So in part, it means that my angel investment of $50K is kind of future-proof because I believe, that the seed VC will come in. So each one sort of along the line is looking backwards and also looking forwards. The other thing to note is, even though on the friends and family side, it's relatively small amounts of money, is in fact the riskiest stage along the curve. Right, the mom or the rich uncle that gives you 20 grand, the chances of your mom ever getting that money back is very, very low. And so although it's a small-ish amount of money, it's super, super, super high risk. And then conversely, at the end of the graph, even though a growth VC might be signing a check of $50 million or $100 million, so wow, it's big numbers, it's the least risky. Why? Because you've already generated success, right? They're only backing you when you've proven to be a winner. And, not to say that their investment is guaranteed, but it's way, way, way less risky. So it's an interesting kind of inverse dynamic there that earlier in the curve, super, super risky. Later in the curve, despite larger amounts, is less risky. 2 books I like to recommend, particularly related to the venture side of things. One is Venture Deals. If ever you think that what you're doing is suitable for company-level investment, and you want to talk to angels and VCs and accelerators and so on, read this book. You'll walk into those meetings and they'll think you're a ninja or something because most people don't understand this stuff and they really kind of get exploited. So extremely, extremely good book. And then The Art of the Start is a nice kind of catch-all overview of being an entrepreneur, building a business, thinking about how to pitch that business and how you structure a pitch, how you talk to investors, the economics of investing, etc. It's not game related at all. There's never the word video game in the book, but it's a nice sort of entrepreneurial overview. And it's particularly good if, as a developer, you're really coming at this from the creative side. You're an artist, designer, coder, musician, whatever, and you've just never, ever been in a business context, right? You didn't learn it in school. You never worked in an accounting firm or a bank. You've just never had exposure to the businessy side of things. This is a really, really good book to start to say, well, listen, I realize I need to be an independent entrepreneur. I can't just be a starving artist forever. Read that book, and it'll give you a good sense of how to start thinking about being a business person, being an entrepreneur. And so with all of that, I hope that gives you a better sense of how funding works, some real life examples of how different studios and projects put their funding together, and also a bit of theory on funding models and so on. Thank you very much. I think we've got some time for questions. So if anyone has questions, I think there's a mic. Is there a microphone?
No, because they're on cable, but we are.
Oh, the lights, yeah, so I can see everyone. And so while you're thinking of your questions, I'll just, another note, and it's kind of something we're seeing more and more often, and I mentioned this at Covadis. If you're going to see investors, you have to go to them with an opportunity. You can't go to them with your cash problem, right? We will often, a developer will reach out to us, say, hey, I'm a cool developer, I got this cool game, can I come talk to you? And so, we know it's gonna be a pitch. So we say, okay, sure, come on over. They sit down, here's my cool game, here's my cool team, and I'm running out of cash, right? We budgeted and scheduled this, big surprise, it's gonna take this, and I don't know what to do, I have no more cash, I've got 20 grand in the bank, and I need, whatever the math is, are you interested? Am I interested in what? Your problem? Fuck no. I don't care that you mismanage your budget and your schedule and now you're running out. Why am I interested in that? And so they present their problem and ask if we're interested, instead of saying, here's the cool game, here's the cool team, we believe we have this kind of potential and opportunity, we're doing this thing different, this is why we're gonna succeed. Are you interested in helping us get there and backing us to reach that amazing vision? Now, they may still have a cash problem, but that's not what they're pitching to us. They have to pitch us the opportunity. Then we'll sit down and say, oh, geez, you seem to have a cash problem. Well, yeah, and then we sort of work through it, but get us excited about the opportunity, not about your cash problem. So that's happened a few times, even just in the past few weeks, where they pitch us their problem. But anyways, all right, questions? Yeah, go ahead. So Execution Labs primarily is a equity investor. We look at the team first and foremost, and if we believe in you and your team, then it's you and the team that we're backing. Sure, we also need to get excited about the project you're working on right now, because that project serves, it will enable you to get to the next checkpoint in the rally, and importantly, we're also looking at what your long-term vision is, not just of the project, but of the company. What kind of company you're building, what kind of project, what does your roadmap look like? And part of the reason why we do that is we want to see that you're building momentum from game to game. So if you're I don't know, I'll use one of our studios, KitFox. KitFox Games, they released Moon Hunters last month, one of the most highly anticipated indie games from last year. It was their second game. Their first game was a roguelike sci-fi game. And Moon Hunters is a four-person RPG set in a Mesopotamia, so it doesn't look anything like the same game. But underneath, both of them have procedural level generation. Both of them have sort of interactive narrative splicing, where as you play, the narratives sort of splice together. And so a lot of the fundamental kind of systems are very similar, even though you look at them and they're totally two different games. But if they wanted to make Moon Hunters as their first game, it would have been too ambitious. So they had to make Shattered Planet first in order to experiment on the design, in order to build some of the procedural level generation tools into Unity, and build some of the, what we call scaffolding, that enabled them to then make Moonhunters as their second game. And so we're looking at that kind of stuff. But we're investing in the team, we're taking equity. Now, deal structure-wise, because we're a very hands-on investor, we will generally take more than if just some banker off the street gave you money, right? Because we're providing production resources, we're providing access to our global network of all the platforms and partners. But each deal tends to be slightly different, but it's primarily equity investment. Yeah. All right, there was another question over. Yeah, at the back. Seed.
Yeah. So are you friends, school, or family?
We're crazy. Yeah, I put us in the category of fools, and it's why you don't see many game-specific. Where is it? Yeah, so we tend to be pre-revenue, although we're not as crazy as your mom, because we do require, yeah, or your mean rich uncle. All right, here we go. This is the one. So, I mean, most accelerators will kind of be in this range. We started in this range, and now we're more in this range. But accelerators will usually be kind of pre-revenue, and the term accelerator comes from they're going to accelerate your traction in the market in order to become revenue generating, generally speaking. So we're early on. We're crazy because we're one of the only investors in the world that will invest in game studios making games. But as I said, we're not crazy as your mom because we do require that you've got something, right? That you have a prototype, that we can touch it and say, all right, there's some magic here. We believe in you and the project, and also we require that the team is in place, or at least the core team, right? A bit like I was saying before with the stepping in the shit. If it's I got my buddy at Ubisoft and some other guy that's doing web design and whatever, and they're just waiting for me to get the money, and then that means that they're not committed enough. To really do it. So we need the core team in place. We need some kind of prototype for us to sort of try out and play, and then we're in a position to invest. So whereas your mom, it'll be like, oh, here, honey, here's 10,000. Go off and have some fun, and then that gives you money to like come here and show you whatever. So yeah, so we're crazy. All right, there's over here.
So I'd like to very interested to see you've invested in, say, like Hitbox Games. They're making typical Steam indie games. It was always my thought that, as a equity investor, you're hoping for that company to, IPO at the end of the day, or turn into this big company that then has this payday. I mean, how do you see that working when you're investing in these kind of smaller indie teams?
Right. So did everyone hear that at the back or no? So Kit Fox is not going to IPO. I think it would be extremely unlikely. So the basic question is, what's the exit, right? So as an investor, as an equity investor, rightly so, the idea is to grow the company so that it gets bought for $2 billion or IPOs, as you said. Most game companies are not going on the stock market, King or whatever aside. And very few exit. Not everybody's like Mojang and is going to sell for $2 billion to Microsoft. And so, really, there's three exits. One exit is, as you say, IPO, which is extremely rare. The other exit is M&A, so Microsoft buying you for $2 billion or whoever. And the other one's not really an exit, but it's dividends, right? So the company generates sufficient revenue and success that they start paying out dividends to their shareholders, and then as a shareholder, we would sort of benefit from and get paid out in those proceeds. as an early stage investor, I mean, we have to have some sense that it's not always going to be you and your buddy, right? There has to be that sense of commercial intent that you're going to make games that are interesting and have some kind of degree of potential to scale and grow big. One of the things that we have that, I mean, not every investor includes is a buyback option. So let's say Kid Fox does well, right? And they make a few $1 million and they make a Steam game each year and they're doing fine. And we're super happy and they're a good business, but they're not a target for a $2 billion buyout, and certainly they're not going, IPO on the stock market. We can go to Tanya and say, all right, Tanya, you've done a great job. Value of the company has grown. You're generating, $1 million a year of revenue, but we've been sitting here with a piece of paper for 5 years that say we own shares, buy them back. And then we do it at sort of market value. And we only will trigger that after 5 years if you've been profitable, you have the money in the bank. So we're not going to force you and bankrupt you to buy back the share. So then as an investor, we have the opportunity to at least convert. And what that means is there isn't the same pressure that you might get from more traditional VCs to say, you better become the next Zynga or King or you're screwed. So we give a bit more flexibility, and we have that kind of safety valve option if you hit a good level, but not an IPO level. Yeah. All right. There was a question over. Yeah. Yeah. If you don't own the IP, by definition, you are no longer indie. Right, then you're work for hire. You're something. You're straddling two other boundaries. Right, so the value you create is the value of the IP. In some cases, that might be technological IP. In most cases, it's the game. And if you are taking on a publisher and you give them you sell them the IP, whatever, you relinquish the IP, and then you come to me for a company investment, I'm like, dude, you just sold your What am I investing in? Then it's a work for hire, and we said, work for hire is not interesting. So yeah, so as independents, you need to fiercely hold on to your IP, and I it's kind of funny, and maybe a publisher will say something different. You should be more willing to give up a small piece of equity to bring on the right kind of investment partner that can not just give you money, but also add value in terms of coaching, guidance, introductions to other key partners, et cetera, and bring on an investment partner and relinquish some ownership of the company more so than relinquishing IP. Now, I say that because I'm an investor, and so you would be giving me that piece of equity, but having Execution Labs as part of your partnership is way more valuable than selling off your IP. So yeah, but it's funny because we get the inverse often, right? Developers come to us and they're super, super precious about their equity as more of an emotional, I don't want to lose control and I don't want to give it up. Whereas if a publisher says, well, here's the $1 million, I'll take the IP, it's like, all right, and they sign and give it away. So yeah, hold on to your IP for sure. All right, there's another question. Yeah.
So, as you said, there's a lot of people in the industry, GDC, especially with some very visionary ideas, musical games, but it seems like a lot of the time the problem is really marketing the game, getting the word out to the gamers, basically. Does your company also offer connections or maybe advice to get marketing done?
So Execution Labs, as I said, we're hands-on, and so we will work with you on overall marketing strategy, long-term vision of the company, sort of corporate strategy, if you will. One of the values that we have is we've been in the industry 20 years, and if you need to talk to Steam or Oculus or Sony or I don't know, publishers in Japan or distributors in Brazil, we know everyone and can just pick up the phone. But we only do that for the family members, meaning the ones we've invested in. So you can't come to me and say, hey, I need that hookup at Apple. If I invest in you, then I'll bring you through the front door. But this sort of brings up an important sort of related question that you didn't actually ask, but the marketing aspect, there's a few elements there that are important to understand. One is marketing doesn't just mean sending a press release to journalists, right? That's PR, and that's one small piece of marketing. Marketing includes the product and defining what the product is. Marketing includes the audience and defining who your audience is. Marketing includes other things like location, if you're a store, or whatever, all kinds of other stuff that are much broader than what you say, which is, I just gotta let people know about it. That's PR. And so, as independent developers, you can no longer relinquish that role to anyone else or ignore it because you're just a developer, right? Marketing is part of the development process, even though instinctively it doesn't feel like that. And so part of the other lessons there about missing the target, right, is that you didn't think about the game as a product and that product going into a marketplace that has user patterns and player behaviors and so on. And so you think you're making good development decisions by doing a local co-op game, you know, no networking code, et cetera, as you described, but you made really poor marketing decisions because it's the wrong audience, the wrong product for that market, et cetera. So as a developer, you have to be thinking about marketing and how does this game reach an audience, who the audience is, you know, user player behaviors and pattern, all that kind of stuff is part of the development process and should be part of what you're doing day one. If you're an independent entrepreneur, if you have commercial intent, if you're a starving artist that's just doing crazy cool experimental stuff, well then do that and you don't have to worry about, who the audience is and whatever. But don't expect to generate any meaningful revenue. Don't expect to get funding unless it's from an arts council or something like that. So again, from the top, right, there was a notion of, am I a starving artist or am I trying to be an entrepreneur about this? And, the question of marketing, sort of, I guess the answer there is dependent on which of those identities you're taking on. All right, there was another question. All right, at the back. Yeah, I think most indies start at the project side, right? Because most indies are like, I got this idea, and I want to create it, and my buddies are going to help me, and it's all about the project. And often, the company is a byproduct of like, oh crap, in order to sign up for Steam, I need to have like a company, ID or tax, like, and it's like, it's this thing I got to do in order to actually like ship the game and collect a check and so very few indies are thinking about the design and development of their company as a thing that needs to be designed and developed, independent of it's just the shell that I need to like pay the bills and like, submit to Apple or Steam or whatever. And so kind of a fundamental exercise is, get together with some buddies and think of designing the company. Right? Think of the vision. What would a 3-game roadmap look like? What kind of culture do we want to establish? What kinds of games do we want to build? And if you're looking for external investment, you have to have a company, you have to have a roadmap, you have to have that kind of company level vision, not just project by project vision. But to answer your question, most developers are coming at it from a creative perspective, a project-based perspective, and are thinking of it, as a project. And in fact, one of the trick questions we have when we talk to developers when they're pitching to us, we'll ask them, what does game 3 look like? And if they don't have an answer, then we know that they're only focused on the project. They're not thinking about the long-term vision of the company. And 9 times out of 10, it's like, oh, we're so busy with this one that we haven't even thought about what the next one is. And if you're not thinking about what the next one is or the third one is, then how are you building the scaffolding that will enable you to get there? And so the scaffolding analogy is, you're trying to build this beautiful tower, skyscraper, or whatever, a palace or whatever. You have to build the scaffolding that enables you to build the next level. But if you don't have a roadmap, then you build a little thing here, and then abandon it because you were doing VR or whatever. Then you do a little thing here because now you're going to do a mobile game, and then you abandon it. And then you do a little thing over here for some other, Twitch something, and you're kind of all over the map. It's hard to sort of back that kind of company that's just sort of trying things at random. That's why the notion of company, roadmap, vision, scaffolding is super important. All right, yeah. So how fleshed out does that 3-game roadmap need to be? I mean, it depends. So we're excited when someone can say anything other than, oh, I'm just thinking of this game. So if you say something more than that, you're already way ahead. Generally, what we want to see is some maturity around how you articulate the vision of the company. We want to be a studio that makes, multiplayer, whatever with stream. This is the vision. We're working on this first game. Here's the prototype, and it does this and this. But it's our first one, and we have a smaller team, so it's of this scope. We're thinking for our next one, well, it'll have this extra feature, and we're going to take the tech we built in the first to sort of, build more scaffolding to do the second. And the third one maybe looks something like this, but we haven't, it's not too detailed. So, if you gave that kind of answer, it'd be like, all right, these people know what they're talking about. They're on a path. And then we'll work with you as being an investor on that roadmap. And are the features and things you're doing in game 1, is that going to line you up well for game 2? Who are the right other partners for game, so we work with you on that. But if it's just like, I like zombies, and so the first one's zombies, and the second one's probably going to be zombies, and maybe the third one will be zombies too, that's not really a roadmap. But no, you don't have to show up with 3 prototypes. I mean, that's unrealistic demand on our part. But even just being able to articulate, here's what we want to do and how we think the 3 games will line up with that. Yeah.
Is your company actively looking for game developers, or do you just consider people that come to you?
So the question is, are we actively looking, or do we, just wait? We sit back in our throne and wait forever. No, we don't have a throne yet. We do both. Right, so we go to a lot of different events like this all over the world, and so I'm here now, but other team members are at PAX East in Boston, where the Indie Mega Booth is 100, indie showcase. So it goes both ways. We're out there scouting and looking, and then sure, we will often get emails and requests or referrals of someone who said, hey, so and so introduced me and thought it'd be good. So it's inbound and outbound, it'd be interesting. I've never looked at the ones we've done to see did they come to us versus, or how many came to us versus how many do we chase after. But maybe I shouldn't say this, but I think most of them we chased, right? Oftentimes, either they're just so busy that they don't even have time to kind of look up and see that they need help, and then we see what they're doing, okay, we want to be involved here, and we have to do, I have to pitch you that I'm worthwhile, please take my money. So that does happen, but of course the reverse, which is you come to me and say, look how awesome, what we're doing is amazing, give us money. I'm like, you're right, here's our money. So yeah, it goes both ways. All right, did I miss a hand over here, or I think we're good. Any other questions? All right, go ahead.
What protections do you take to protect your investments?
What protections? I can put you in a headlock. We get really scared. So we sign a contract, right? There's a memorandum of understanding. We negotiate. We sign, which says I'll give you money and do all this. Give you the love, and then in return you will deliver this. And so there's a memorandum there that we sign, and then as equity investors, we become shareholders in your company, and shareholders have legal rights. I mean, depending what country you're in, and depending what the corporate law of that nation is, and what we write into those contracts and shareholder agreements and so on, there's rights there where, if you try to skip town or you're going to sell your IP for $1 to your brother and start a new company so that I don't get the value, all that stuff is blocked, and there's different rules against that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you take the money and run off to Cuba or something, yeah, okay, maybe there's not much I can do, but generally speaking, it's, there's contracts and we have shareholder rights and so on. Yeah, and don't forget the headlock. All right, so unless there's any other burning questions, we're done. All right, so thanks again, and go ahead and get all the money.